but they really want like a partner in their marketing strategy. So we really work closely with the business owners to develop and execute effective marketing strategies that really make sense for your overall vision for the business and your goals for the business. So yeah, that's the quick spiel. I live in Springfield. If anybody else lives in Springfield, big Springfield fan. And yeah, so we can go ahead and get
Yeah, real
started.
quick
Let
before
me.
you dive in, Sam, one, I did change permissions, so you should be able to share your screen now. If you can't,
Okay,
let me know.
perfect.
We are recording this, everyone. I just want to give you full disclosure that this is being recorded. We do have a Tuesdays Together YouTube. We will upload it to YouTube so that you can go back and watch this again, or someone else can. I do always record in speaker view, so it should be primarily recording just Sam, but I just want everyone to know, if you don't want to be on the recording, go ahead and turn your camera off. Now, just full disclosure.
Okay, perfect. So let me see. Can you guys see it? Wait, I have to click actually share. Wow, that's good. Can you see the deck? Okay, perfect. So, all right, great. Online ad strategies, beautiful. We love it. So these are really all the topics that they wanted us to go ahead and hit on today. So it's going to be how and when to get started, DIY versus outsourcing, what to expect in terms of results, ad strategy for different goals, lead capture, evergreen, digital product launches, and also kind of different places you can run ads, social media, on websites, sponsored posts or boosted posts, things like that. How to set goals and measure success for your ads, determining appropriate ad spend, understanding your ROI, paid ads, formats and terminology, and what makes great creative. So how and when. So the biggest thing that I always say about ads is you can't advertise your way out of a bad strategy. So what's really, really important if you're thinking about maybe ads, or you might be almost ready to do ads or ready to do ads soon, and you're just kind of not really sure when you want to pull the trigger. Ads can be a huge benefit to your business, right? They can really like catapult your business forward. But if you kind of don't have a really good vision for your business and understand your customer purchasing journey, it's going to be really difficult for them to work as effectively as possible for your business, right? So getting super clear on why your customers are purchasing from you, how they're going through that discovery process and that decision-making process, all of those things, really important to get clear on before you start running your ads, whether you are DIYing them or outsourcing them. You're the business owner, right? So even if you're outsourcing to someone who is, an expert in ads and they've run ads in your space a million times before, you still need to be driving the overall strategy of your business, right? You have a vision for your business, where you want it to go. And I find that to be really, really important here. Even though outsourcing to someone, they are going to be able to tell you best practices and things like that and make suggestions, you're still the business owner, right? And so I think that's something really to make sure that you are keeping in mind when you're thinking about running ads and really outsourcing anything for your business, right? One thing to do, and I would recommend everybody does this even if you're not sure if you ever want to run ads, is get your Google Analytics, your Google Search Console, and your Facebook Pixel set up now. Your Facebook Pixel is what will capture traffic that is coming to your site. Google Search Console, same thing. And what that's going to do for you, they're free to set up. They're really easy. It's literally just like going into Facebook Business Manager, setting up a pixel. It gives you a code and you put that code into the header of your website. And they make it super simple to do now, but that's going to get you capturing the traffic that's coming to your site. So you can utilize that traffic. You can retarget to that traffic with ads later if you want to. So that can be really a great way to utilize the traffic and the audience that you already have. So if you don't already have, make sure you have your Google Analytics set up, Google Search Console, and your Facebook Pixel, set that up as soon as you can. And if you don't know how, just Google it. There's like 1,000 tutorials online. So DIY versus outsourcing. And this is a big question for a lot of business owners, especially if you have a tight budget, right? Because obviously, if you have a limited budget, you don't want to be spending, 75% of your overall ads budget on management fees, right? So obviously that the biggest benefit to DIY is that you're not spending that additional portion of your budget to pay someone else to set up and run your campaigns. But if you try to run ads by yourself and you don't know what you're doing, there are horror stories of like people not knowing what they're doing and then accidentally spending $10,000 and then having to like beg Facebook to not actually charge them that much money. That doesn't happen to too many people, especially if you're kind of following how-tos online. But the biggest negative of DIYing your ads without putting the time in ahead to really understand how to set them up correctly is that you're going to spend budget on ads that never really do anything, or you're going to spend budget on ads that look like they're doing something, but you can't totally tell how they're actually benefiting the bottom line of your business if they're actually generating revenue for you, right? Ads are constantly changing, and it's going to be more difficult for you if you're DIYing to keep up with those changes. A really great example of this is anybody who's already advertising at all will have heard about this, but iOS 14 dropped a few weeks ago, and there was a lot of changes and impacts that happened with everybody's ads along with that, because now you can opt out of tracking, right? Like advanced ad targeting. And so people who are running ads had to like verify their domains. And we had a lot of clients ask, kind of hearing about it and asking us, how is this going to affect my ads? Is this going to be a big problem? And the reality is it's not, right? Like those platforms are always kind of changing. But for people who aren't really sure and they haven't been through any major changes in terms of how ads are run or how platforms target, that was a really scary thing, right? And so things like that, right? Like we're touching ads every day, we're in that space. So it's a lot easier. Typically outsourcing is going to get you better results from your campaigns a lot faster, and you're going to be able to track any of those conversions or anything like that. It's going to be a lot clearer for you. So I think, if you feel like you don't have the technical understanding or the time to put in to learn how to do it correctly, which that's always the biggest thing, right? It's either your time or your money. They both cost. So it's going to be one or the other. I would recommend maybe saving for enough time where then you do have enough budget to outsource if you feel that you're really not going to have enough time to learn how to do it correctly, or else you're kind of just throwing money away. But, speaking of outsourcing, not all outsourcing is created equal, right? Specifically, if you're working in a special group, like real estate, like certain areas of health and wellness, you're going to want to find someone who is familiar in those spaces, because you have all platforms, Google, Facebook, all those things have certain words, certain targeting that is not an option, right? Either because they don't want people discriminating against anyone, or they, a good example, it would be like medical spas have a lot of treatments that are not FDA approved, and it can be hard for them to figure out how to run ads for their business because their ads are always getting rejected. And that's because they are talking about experimental treatments, maybe not in their ad at all, right? But it says it somewhere in their website, but they would never know that, right? Because that's not what they're doing all the time. So even if you're outsourcing, it's always good to look for somebody who has experience in your industry and in your niche. They're also going to be able to give you some of those best practices in terms of how your ads should work into your customer journey. But again, they're not going to be familiar with your specific products and services, your specific customers. So really be prepared with those answers when you're outsourcing so that you can make sure whoever you're outsourcing to really understands, right? Really understands those needs, why those customers are purchasing from you. Again, can't advertise your way out of a bad strategy. There is an option where you hire someone to kind of provide an initial campaign setup or an audit of what you're already doing to make sure that your campaigns are set up correctly and everything like that. So that also might be something if you're on a limited budget. There's a lot of providers out there that will either offer this audit or they've kind of even created a course about how to run your own ads plus an audit. So those do exist, and that might be a good fit for you, right? If you are running on a tight budget and you have enough time and you want to learn, but you want a little bit more hand holding there. So there's a few different options, and DIYing is definitely a good option depending on your budget, but just be aware of potential negatives around that, and things to look out for. So what to expect in terms of results? How long do you need to run ads to see results? How much budget do you need to see results, right? So my biggest thing is, and for most freelancers and agencies, they're gonna require a 3-month commitment from you, basically because we don't want you getting in your own way of your ads. Ads are kind of like an avalanche or like a rock rolling down a hill. They will build momentum as they run. So you really don't want to turn them on, let them run for 2 weeks and then say, oh, they're not getting the return that I was expecting. We need to either tear it all down and start from scratch, or don't do it. It's not making money after a month, right? You need time to be able to test and optimize, or whoever you're outsourcing to needs time to be able to test and optimize, build the appropriate audiences, all of those things. So really you need to plan to run those ads for a minimum of 3 months. Typically, and you might see results before that 3-month mark hits, right? But that's just a nice, don't reevaluate spend and things like that more than once a quarter, because some people, business owners, get a little too trigger happy in terms of wanting to change things and stuff. And it might not be that it's not working. It might just need a little bit more time to work better for you. So that's typically what I would recommend, a minimum amount of time. But a lot of campaigns, really good, strong, solid campaigns that are going to continue to work for you month after month, year after year, those can take 6 or more months to really work themselves out, depending on your industry and niche and what you're promoting and what your budget is, right? The other side of this coin is, if you are working with an extremely small budget, your ads aren't getting served as many times. So that learning period of being able to test and then optimize those ads is going to stretch and take a lot longer. So, if you're working with an extremely tight budget, or you're running a lot of campaigns, you're going to need a lot more time. So those two things really go hand in hand. But even if you had a huge budget, you still need 3 months. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind there, when you're looking to start ads. Yeah, just one of the worst things that I've seen people do is just freak out after a month and then turn them off, and you'd honestly be better off not running them at all. Why bother, right? In terms of budget, I typically like to see a minimum of $500 a month ad spend. If you're DIYing, and you'll probably see this if you're doing any research to run your own ads, you can get started with as little as $5 a day advertising on Facebook, right? And that's true. And you might see results there. But you're not going to be able to run more than one campaign with that amount of money. Obviously, you're going to be DIYing at that rate. And again, that testing period takes a little bit more time because your ad isn't getting served to as many people. So if you have at least $500 a month for a budget, it's workable. We can learn things, and you're going to be able typically on average, depending on your industry, that's enough budget to really get the ball rolling and get the ball moving and start to optimize those campaigns, see that ROI, and then you can reinvest some of that additional profit back into ads to get your budget a little bit higher, right? Typically, for our clients, they're in that 1 to 2 to 3, all the way up to $5,000 a month range. But we like to see at least $500 a month. And if you're outsourcing, you're probably going to need at least $500 a month, because again, you don't want 75% of your budget to be going towards management fees, right? That's just not going to be impactful. 70% of customers are more likely to purchase products when their company utilizes retargeting ads. Retargeting ads are the ones that follow you around the internet, right? Most, in terms of advertising on Google, businesses on average make a 2 to 1 return. So for every $1 that they spend, they're making $2. That is the average, but we have some clients, like right now, we have a client who's getting like a 30 to 1 return, right? So it really depends on your industry. It depends on your niche. It depends on your budget, all of those kind of questions around there, right? But when you do ads correctly, you will see your return on your investment. Almost everyone can run ads for their business successfully, right? But it's not a one size fits all strategy. And so that's just always something to keep in mind, whether you're DIYing or outsourcing, right? So now we are going to hit on ad strategy for a few different goals: lead capture, evergreen, digital product launch. So I think this is top of mind for a lot of people because so many people made pivots in their business in the last year. A lot of people added digital products or courses or things like that to their businesses, a year ago, right? Last spring. And so for a lot of those people, they're now, if you were a service provider and your core business was as a service provider and you added some of these digital products onto your product offering, those are one-to-many products, right? You could serve and sell to many people and scale up from there in a way that your services might not necessarily be able to do, or at least not in the same way. So a lot of people have been looking at, okay, how can I just scale these digital products and courses with ads, right? And you certainly can do that. The best ad strategy is going to depend on what you're promoting and the results you want to get from your ads. So with lead capture, there's kind of two different things to think about there. There's lead magnets, which you might also, freebies, whatever you want to call them. These are you're giving value in exchange for someone's email address, right? Downloadables, whatever you want, opt-ins, whatever you want to call them. So most website traffic isn't going to convert to a sale the first time they visit your website, right? Obviously. So by utilizing lead magnets, you can get their email address so that you can remarket to them later. That would be, via abandoned shop or abandoned cart emails, or just like, hey, we saw that you were looking into this, anything like that. Or, hey, you downloaded this freebie, you might also like this purchased product thing, right? So you're going to be able to build brand awareness if you're capturing those emails, and that's going to help you bring those customers or those potential customers down your purchasing funnel. So you're also, we very much live in a time of people are more protective of their emails these days, right? They're not just going to give you their email for no reason. So this is you can think of it as a transaction, right? They are giving you their email address in exchange for something else, in exchange for something that they see value in. And these can be utilized to a cold audience, which is people who haven't previously heard or interacted with your brand, because excuse me, because it is, even though it's a transaction, it's really low, you don't need to have built a lot of trust yet, right? That lead magnet is going to build trust because they're going to get that lead magnet in exchange for their email address. And they're going to be like, wow, this is super valuable. This is great information. And you're going to start to build the know, like, trust factor from that point, right? Um, lead capture is a little bit different. That's going to be where someone fills out a form expressing interest or intent to purchase your product or service. So this would be, technically a lead capture is when someone fills out the contact form on your website, right? You are capturing that lead via a form. You typically want to run these types of ads to a warmer audience because you want them to know who the hell you are, right? Why am I going to fill out this form if I don't know you from Jesus, right? And so you're not really going to run these to a cold audience. You want them to know a little bit about you already, maybe be familiar with their product. They might follow you on social media, or they've been to your website in the past. They might be on your email list, any of those things. Because you're basically, this is an ask, right? You're asking them to show intent or interest in learning more about your business. A cold audience is not likely to give you that information.
Just in case you want it.
So lead magnet, lead capture, we're talking about two different temperatures, and that cold audience versus warm audience, right? Those are different temperatures that we talk about when we're talking about these audiences, but it's basically, has this person interacted with your brand or heard about your brand before, or have they not? So this is going to depend also on your product or service, your price point, and where leads are coming in their purchasing journey, right? So for you photographers, people are typically hitting you further down in the purchasing journey. They have more purchasing intent when they're first finding out about you a lot of the time. Either they are thinking, whether it's a wedding or family photos or whatever, they're kind of thinking about that thing. They want that thing already, right? Versus when we kind of just, I might need that in the future, right? Like that. So that would be two different people, right? You might have someone who's further down the purchasing journey who hasn't heard of you before, but because they're further along and they have a higher purchasing intent, a lead capture might be a good fit for them, right? And that's going to have to do a lot with your audience targeting and things like that. And lead capture is really interesting because platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you can actually capture that lead from within the app now. So if you serve them a lead capture ad in Facebook, they can actually click on that ad and fill out that form without ever leaving the app, without ever leaving Facebook, which is great because you're decreasing the friction, right? You're lowering the barrier to entry there while still being able to capture their information and retarget to them or remarket to them later, versus asking them to go outside to a landing page on a website, right? And load your website. So kind of all things to think about there in terms of lead magnets and lead capture. When we're talking about evergreen content or products that are going to be forever young, right? They're not seasonal, they're not trendy. If you haven't already looked at what content of yours can be evergreen, what digital products of yours can be evergreen, definitely take a look at that. Even from an organic standpoint, it can be really helpful, and that can be a lot of your cornerstone content on your website. But it's basically creating content, creating digital products and services, and then building campaigns that can run for months and years on end without ever being out of date, without ever seeming out of date. So this would be if you were saying like, oh, best digital ad strategies for 2021, right? That's not evergreen because you're going to have to go back and update that content after really like halfway through 2021, right? But if you are, promoting something that's like how to know when to get started with ads for your business, right? Everybody's always going to be wondering that. That's going to be a question that people are always going to be asking. So that would be more like evergreen content. And that might be a lead magnet that you run ads to a cold audience for that lead magnet, right? And that campaign is going to be able to run as long as you want it to, because it's not going to be outdated at any time. So in terms of the content that's in your actual ads, when you're running those evergreen ads, you can incorporate testimonials, case studies, highlight the unique features and benefits of your product or service specifically. You could talk about awards or recognitions, answer frequently asked questions, or create tutorials or how-tos. That's all good copy and content for your evergreen ads and your evergreen campaigns. So if you're DIYing, this is really great, right? Because then you're not going to have to go in and you can test the copy, you can test the creative, but you're not going to have to be messing with that side of stuff as much. You'd be more working with the audience and your bids and things like that. So if you're DIYing, this is a really great, maybe come at it from a place of, okay, how can I create evergreen content and an evergreen campaign? Again, your evergreen campaigns, they can run forever and ever, but you can also still have evergreen campaigns that are hitting people at different points in their purchasing journey, right? So we talked about that evergreen lead magnet that you can run, but that can also kick off a series of, okay, then after they run that lead magnet, they're added, they get driven to this one specific landing page to get that lead magnet. And then we're running an ad that's retargeting those people 5 days later, getting them to buy this lower ticket digital product, right? And so that's going to be kind of more of a funnel, more of a series of things that are happening, but that can continue to run, right? And so you can say, if they've signed up for this webinar, if you have a recurring webinar or masterclass happening, okay, 5 days later, I want them to get served these ads promoting my membership, something like that, right? So the evergreen piece isn't just happening at one point of the purchasing journey. You can kind of create that really nice funnel with ads throughout the purchasing journey for those types of people. And then again, you would then be focusing on testing other parts of the campaign, like the CTA, the audience, your bids, all of that kind of stuff. The next kind of ad campaign type we're going to hit on is for launches. One thing that I really want to stress here is you really need to think about your launch strategy before, during, and after your launch, and how ads will roll into that. Most launches flop. And a big part of that is because there's not enough planning and not enough road ahead of a launch. So you create a launch and you decide that you're going to launch in a month something brand new that you've never primed your audience for ever before, right? Make sure you are giving your audience time to learn about, find out about, hear about, warm up to, and be interested in your launch. That goes for your whole marketing strategy for your launch, not just ads, but it holds true for both. So launches feel usually scary and complicated because people don't really sit down and think about each part of your launch and how you are building that awareness around that specific launch and for your business overall, right? So kind of some examples about how you would utilize ads in a launch would be you can run lead capture ads before the launch to get people on a wait list in exchange for some immediate value, like some masterclass or something like that. And then you're going to be able to launch to that wait list, which is, really great. And I know a lot of people really prefer to launch to a wait list. So then when you are launched and when you're live, you can then retarget those users with, oh, hey, guess what? Now it's open and you're on the wait list. You get this great deal, right? You can also utilize ads to retarget users who are on your email list, who follow you on social media, or who you have pixeled with the Facebook pixel on your website. People have come to your website before to promote, to get them to either join the wait list or ahead of time, or promote your launch and get them to convert during the launch. You can also retarget people who are on your wait list and who didn't purchase during the launch after the launch. And maybe that's some sort of additional cart open, or maybe it's a downsell, right? If they didn't purchase during that launch. But so the most important thing is to really think about how you're marketing and promoting that launch overall, before, during, and after. And then you can layer in, okay, how can we utilize ads to help with this launch? Again, you cannot advertise your way out of a bad strategy. People have never heard of you. People have never heard of this launch that you're doing, and you only give it a week. It's not going to work. I don't care how much money you throw behind it. So that's just really something to keep in mind there. Really set yourself up for success. Give yourself and your audience time to warm up ahead of that launch. So next we're going to hit on a few different places you can be running ads. There's different places you can run ads, and a lot of that is going to depend on your customer, the customer journey, and your goals for those ads. So obviously ads that we're all going to be familiar with are social media ads. You can run ads on almost every social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, you name it, right? They're all monetizing their platforms. They all want you to run ads on their platforms. But choosing which platform you want to run ads on is very similar to choosing which platform you want to be active on, right? For your organic content marketing. If your audience is not on Snapchat, ads on Snapchat are so cheap. It doesn't really matter, right? Because your audience isn't on Snapchat. It's the same thought process around, which platform do you want to run ads on? Facebook and Instagram are kind of like the entry level in terms of running social media ads, right? Really huge audience, pretty affordable overall, great targeting, right? Not all the targeting is, created equal on these social media platforms. Your targeting on Snapchat is not as robust as your targeting on Facebook. Your targeting on TikTok is not as robust as your targeting on Instagram. It doesn't mean you don't want to advertise on TikTok. It's just something to keep in mind, right? Typically prices on LinkedIn are pretty expensive. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're considering running ads on LinkedIn, really look at, is your audience on Facebook or Instagram versus LinkedIn? Would it make more sense to run ads on Google instead of LinkedIn? But ads on LinkedIn are typically going to be pretty expensive. So any of you B2B people who are thinking about running ads on LinkedIn, just keep that in mind. If you're B2C, don't run ads on LinkedIn. That's ridiculous. So it just doesn't make sense for the price. It's good. You can get better results somewhere else. And yeah, your targeting on Facebook and Instagram is going to be super, super, super specific, right? Which can be good, but if you're DIYing, like, don't get crazy. But Facebook and Instagram can also be really great because you can build lookalike audiences and custom audiences. So this is where, if you have a really nice, strong Instagram following, like 8 or 10,000, you can actually run ads to your Instagram followers. But you can also build a lookalike audience based on, and so you can say to Instagram, run ads to people who are similar to my Instagram followers. Same for your pixel. You've right after this, you're obviously going to get off this call and then get your pixel on your website immediately. And then you can say, okay, Facebook, I want to run ads to people who have been to my website in the last 180 days. Okay, Facebook, I want to build a lookalike audience, and I want to serve my ads to people who are similar to the people who have been to my website in the last 180 days. Not all social media platforms can do that, right? So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Social ads are typically visual, and they can be really great at connecting with your audience depending on what you're selling. But that also means you need to have good quality images or be creating graphics or videos, right? So that's also something to keep in mind. For you photographers, you might be like, hell yeah, I'm all over that, right? But anybody else who doesn't have any branding photography, who's not really great at that, and you're wanting to DIY, it might be a little bit scary, right? So be thinking about that. Social ads can be less effective at getting leads to convert quickly, because you are serving them, you're serving them that ad, and they might be like, oh, that's cool. And they might click, or they might be like, oh yeah, I want that at some point, right? Versus an ad like a Google ad where they're searching for that thing, right? So they might be further down the purchasing journey. There's more purchasing intent there, right? So just something to think about. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get purchases from social media ads. That's not what that means at all. But overall, you really want to think about, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, what are your goals around your ads? What are the results you want to see for ads? So boosted/sponsored posts. That's like Facebook created boosted posts to figure out how to get money from people who don't understand how to run ads. So how can we get people spending money on ads who are intimidated by running ads? That's why they were created. You may have heard people like saying like, never boost your posts. How dare you? It's a waste of money. You're throwing your money away, right? That's not true. They have a purpose, but you need to be super clear on what that purpose is. That purpose means that you can only create a boosted post from a social media post. So it has to have already been posted, or you have to post it in order to boost this post. But it's just going to get that post on more people, in front of more people. It's going to get more eyes on that post. So typically it's going to mean that that post gets more engagement, likes, comments, shares, things like that. So if your goal is really, oh, I really want to build brand awareness around this thing, or I really want to grow my following, boosted posts might not be that horrible for you, right? But if you're like, oh, I really want to sell more, no, boosted posts is not going to be right for you. That's dumb. So just really keep that in mind. A lot of people who run ads will tell you like boosted posts are the worst thing that you could ever do. It's not that they're not going to work, but they have a very specific reason for existing, and it's to boost that post to get that more eyes on that post. So if you have a very limited budget and you're really looking to increase sales, you're not going to have direct conversions. You're not going to have sales coming from a boosted post. So that's something to keep in mind. I have some companies who, we have clients who it's a multi-million-dollar revenue client, and they do utilize some boosted posts, right? Because they're also running ads. They're also running regular ads, and then we utilize boosted posts for certain social media posts. So that's just really something to keep in mind there. What's the actual goal for your ads? And then again, with social ads, you're going to create an objective for your ads when you're setting those up. So there's more targeting available when it's an actual ad, even though both of these are happening on Facebook or Instagram. With a social ad, you can set how you want to bid on that ad. You can set what the goal is. You can do a little bit more audience targeting, all of those things. So if you are looking to get more specific around those things, you're going to want to run an actual ad, not a boosted post. So people get super confused between the difference between these things. So let me know if you guys have any questions about that. And then Google ads are paid search ads. You're paying to have your listing featured in the search engine result page. You bid on this by using keywords and audience specific interests. Typically Google ads are going to be more expensive than social ads, but again, there's a higher purchasing intent typically. So while Facebook and Instagram and social ads might be really great for building awareness, Google ads are typically great for reaching customers at the time of a purchasing decision. Yeah, so that's really, AdWords is going to be really great for people who are further along in the purchasing funnel, right? Display advertising is where you have ads being served to you in your Gmail, on different websites, things like that. So they're run on Google, but they are visual as well. They're not just coming up in your search results. This is similar to social ads where it's more brand awareness, right? You're not necessarily hitting them. It's kind of like push versus pull. So we're pushing to them with social ads and display network ads. Pull is going to be your Google search ads, right? A lot of this is not display advertising is a little bit like, especially if you're DIYing, you're probably not going to use display advertising just because Google search ads and social ads are a little bit more accessible. And depending on your budget, they also might be a little bit more accessible that way. Yeah, typically these ads are going to be cheaper than search ads, again, because there's not that same level of purchase intent. Okay, goals. How to set, we gotta like, sorry guys, so I'm about to pick up the pace a little bit. But you'll have the deck to look at in the recording and everything. So in terms of goals for your campaigns, there's a lot of different objectives you can set for your campaign. And so that might be like awareness and reach, and that might be actual conversions, right? And even within conversions, that can mean different things. So again, this is where it's really important to understand what your goals are for your ads. So we have awareness, which can be measured by impressions or engagement. Doesn't always directly result in new leads or increased sales, right? Retargeting is where we talked about you can retarget people who are already familiar with your brand, who have been to your website, who follow you on social media, who have downloaded that lead magnet, any of those things. You can have a goal of traffic, which is just driving more traffic to your website. And then conversions, and conversions can also be measured by sales. What to spend? So this is obviously a big question for a lot of people. So, and we hit on this a little bit, but what to spend is also going to really depend on your industry or your niche, right? So lawyers are typically have really high price points, like for Google search. Their average cost per click is going to be much higher than a lot of other industries. Insurance is also a really, really high one. So you can do a little bit of research and a little bit of Googling to see what the average cost per click CPC is for your industry specifically, but also think about the lifetime value of your customers. Are they buying from you once? How much is that price point, right? Or are they buying from you over and over again? Or are they buying from you once, but it's an extremely high price point? So those are just kind of a few things to think about there, because then you can really think about, all right, my lifetime value of my customers is very, very high. So I can spend more money to get qualified, each individual qualified lead. You also want to look at your close rate. As qualified leads come in, do you book 90% of them, or is it more like only 20% of them are converting, right? And you can really start to look at those questions and get a feel for, realistically, how much do I need to spend? You don't want to spend $20 per lead if each individual lead is only converting at 20% and they're only worth $10, right? That would be a very bad spend decision. And then also, depending on what platform you're advertising on, they're going to have different costs associated with those. They're also going to hit on different parts of your audience funnel. Understanding ROI. So you have unique monthly visitors that's on to your site. So if you're having a traffic campaign, a campaign with a goal of traffic, you're going to be looking at unique monthly visitors. Cost per lead and cost per acquisition, kind of similar here in terms of people who are coming in and then people who are converting. Lifetime value of your customer, how much each customer is worth to your business. Return on ad spend, that is how much revenue you're bringing in divided by your total ad spend. That's an important one, right? When you're starting to run ads and you're looking at those things, you want to pay attention to that, because again, if you're spending more money than revenue that's coming in, that's a problem, right? Branded search lift. If you're DIYing, you're probably not going to be paying attention to this too much, but it's basically how you can measure. It's one measurement of brand awareness. Be really wary of vanity metrics, clicks, shares, engagements. Those metrics are happening on boosted posts. And again, they might kind of go into general brand awareness, but we don't really care about them in terms of running actual ads and actual campaigns, because there's not a conversion happening there. Think about it as, when you're doing revenue generating activities in your business versus not, activities that are not revenue generating, right? You want to be super clear on those goals and what's revenue generating and what is not revenue generating, but still needs to happen, right? Same thing for ads. Get super clear on what your goals are for your ads, right? Do you want signups to like a webinar? Do you want calls, right? If you're running Google ads, you can have calls. Do you want purchases? Do you want free trial signups? Do you want, discovery calls booked? Those are all technically conversions, but they're super different, right? Because somebody might sign up, somebody might call you, but they don't actually convert, right? So your return on ad spend there is going to be affected. So get super clear on that. Again, revenue generating versus not revenue generating. Paid ad formats. So I'm just going to, this is, pretty high level, right? But we have the display ads that we talked about. So these are going to be your more visual ads that are showing up on websites and things like that. Social ads, there's like 27 placements on Facebook and Instagram these days. So that would be like in the feed, in stories, in Facebook Marketplace. Like there's so many different places. And so the format is going to be different in all of those places, which Facebook does do an okay job of walking you through those different placements and editing your creative to make sure that it looks correct and good in those different placements. But they're always adding new placements to avoid ad fatigue. And then you have search ads, your Google search ads. This is where it's coming up in your search results page, right? So we have typically on social ads, you're going to have a few different formats: images, video, carousel, swiping, right? Instant experience and collections. So collections are kind of like a carousel in that you're swiping. But when you click, typically a collection is going to be different products for each slide. And when you click on it, it's typically going to open to an instant experience. An instant experience is basically like a landing page within Facebook or Instagram. So you're not making them leave the app to view that additional information. Again, this is super high level because they're always adding more, but this just gives you a good kind of overview of that. All of these have a visual element to them, right? Like you'll notice. So for social ads, that's definitely something to keep in mind. Some general terminology we'll go over really quickly. Bid, ads are you're bidding, right? You're bidding in order to get your ad shown in front of that eyeball. So you will set like bid caps. And so this is where when I said that horror story about people accidentally spending $10,000, that's because they did not set a not to exceed amount. So that's important, right? We don't want to spend $10,000 accidentally on Facebook ads. Optimization, this is just any improvements that you're going to be making to your campaigns, whether that's modifying your bids, changing keywords, adjusting audience targeting, any of those things. Keywords are going to be in your Google search, and that's going to be, I want my ad to show up when someone searches web designer near me or something like that, right? Cryotherapy near me. That's going to be a keyword that you're bidding on. Audience are the users that you're targeting via demographic, psychographic, and online behavior. A lot of that is going to be in your social ads, but also display ads and search ads as well have a little bit of elements of that type of targeting. Pay-per-click, PPC, that's what you're going to see a lot when you're looking at advertising. That's search engine marketing, right? KPI, key performance indicator, when you're looking at metrics and results and things like that, you're going to be seeing that a lot. That's just CTR, click-through rate, all those things, those are KPIs. So these are KPIs: click-through rate, percentage of people who clicked on your ad, cost per click, the cost for every click that your ad receives. A call to action, you always want your ads to have a call to action, tell them what to do next, right? Click here, learn more, sign up. Everything should always have a call to action, right? We're telling them what to do next. Cost per acquisition would be your cost for acquiring that new customer, right? So this is really important. It's something that a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience with advertising might not be paying attention to, but that's really where you're going to be able to see, oh, am I spending too much money according to what I'm actually making from these ads? And then cost per thousand impressions, CPM. This is going to be a really common price, like way that you're charged for ads. And that's you're charged for every 1,000 times your ads load on a page. But these are not unique views. So if the same person sees your ad 20 times, that's going to count that person. So that's something to keep in mind as well. What makes great ad creative? Again, good visuals, effective headlines, good copy, and a call to action, right? This is any content that you're creating, this is what you need these days, right? You want a headline that's really going to be attention grabbing, but also for the skimmers is going to really get all the information that they need. Good copy that's going to talk about the unique value prop of your product or service. Strong call to action telling them what to do next. Visuals, images, graphics, and video. There's no one size fits all ad strategy, but ads can be beneficial for almost any business. And that is it. Wow. That was a lot. Okay, I'm trying to see how can I.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute myself here. I want to open it up. We did get a few questions in the chat. Sam, do you want to stop sharing?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
there we go. Okay, perfect.
Okay. So we did get a few questions in the chat, but I want to open it up to everyone who is still with us here today to see if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Sam. And if no one has an actual question, then I'm going to jump to the chat and we'll take a couple of questions from there. No? Okay, I'm going to jump to the chat. Tatum had a couple of good ones. And I think this is a good one to start, but like, what are good practices to determine what your ad budget should be? I know you mentioned like minimums, don't, consider ads until you have this budget. But like, how do you know what the right budget is? If the right budget for your business is $500 or if the right budget is $3,000, like, how do you determine the best budget?
So a lot of ad platforms and, Facebook and Instagram actually do a really good job of visualizing this, but you can actually start to build an ad and plug in who you want to target, and then they will give you estimates on the reach. So if you're really like, I have no idea how much I should actually be kind of spending around this, I would suggest just like plugging it into that, because it's going to be really specific to every business, right? Because it depends on what your objectives are. Like brand awareness and traffic ads are not going to cost as much typically as ads that we're bringing through, to conversion, right? To an actual purchase. Same thing for audience size, because I know there was a question about that. It'll estimate your audience size around that. So it actually has like a nice little ticker that will say like, ooh, this is too narrow, this is too broad, right? So I would recommend plugging that in, and then also looking at the averages for your industry. You can just Google average CPC for Facebook and Instagram ads, average CPC for Google ads, and then they break it down by industry, because you're going to be able to see then like, oh, okay, average CPC for lawyers on Google is like $1.34 or something. So the average cost per click is $1.34. And then from there, you want to think about your conversion rate in terms of, okay, they're just clicking. You just spent $1.34 just for them to click. So of the people who are clicking that are going to your landing page, how many people do you anticipate are going to like fill out that lead capture form, right? And then from there, how many people are you going to book? Things like that. So that's why your goals are really going to depend on that. If you're running ads to a warmer audience, it's going to cost you less money because they already have awareness of you and they're further down in the purchasing funnel.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think that was,
it's hard. I know it's like, I can't, it's just, you can't. Yeah.
No, totally understand. I think Erin is in the middle of typing her question in here. So we'll get to that as soon as she types, but just I think this will be a quick question while Erin's typing. How much time do you suggest allocating when you're talking about running ads for a launch? Like, do you suggest a 3-month timeline or a 1-month timeline when you're talking about a launch?
It's going to depend on who you're launching to. So for example, if you have like a really strong social media following and you're launching something that's like very in line with your current other offerings, you do want to make sure that you're running ads for like at least a month before, and also, pairing that with organic content. Right. But because you can retarget your current audience, and tell them like, hey, you already know me, I'm doing this cool, great thing, right? That you're going to need a shorter runway than if you're just starting out and you have no, current audience, you have no brand awareness. I would say 4, 5, 6 months at that point. If you have like no built-in audience, you're starting cold. Because what happens is you're going to have to run ads to a cold audience to build that audience up to then be able to retarget them for that launch. Because again, a cold audience is very, very unlikely to just find out about you and buy from you immediately.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Erin, if you just want to chime in with your question, you're welcome to do that too. Sorry, we didn't want to like force you to stay on mute. Okay, we got it in the chat now. Okay, so Erin says, oh, I can't hear you, Erin. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. I'm like, one works on the headphones and then one works, so I'm not blasting through the house. We're a new venue, and I was kind of, I'm kind of focusing on the evergreen content. That's kind of where I was like, had my question. So obviously, since we're new during COVID, we hired a sales team of like 3. So they're just kind of doing their first things. We're obviously, as a venue, going to be working with all different vendors, photographers, everything. So I just wanted to see if you had any basically tips other than that, like on keeping that evergreen content, like for our Facebook and Instagram, because we're just basically like baby, but I know we're going to be.
So yeah, I mean, well, if you're a venue, I would definitely recommend looking at Google search ads because because again, so with Google search ads, it's a little bit different because you can run ads just like wedding venue near me or whatever, right? But you can also still run those ads to that evergreen content, right? If you have a blog post, what to look for in a venue, how to decide a venue, questions to ask when you go to look at a venue. You could run some ads and test some ads, Google search ads to those, and even Facebook and Instagram ads to those posts to a cold audience, right? Because that post in and of itself, that blog post is giving that value, right?
Yeah.
So you could have a post that's about that, and at the bottom of the post have like a really nice freebie that goes like very hand in hand with it, with a lead magnet form at the bottom of that post. So you could test running ads directly to the post that has the lead magnet below it. And then you can also test running lead magnet, just boom, right to that lead magnet ads. And but if you have your Facebook pixel installed, you can still capture those people who click on the ad just to read the blog post, even if they're not filling out the lead magnet. So you could retarget them later with those lead magnet ads.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was helpful, Sam. And that
Thank
actually answered a question which I had asked, which is there ever a point when you would want to run an evergreen ad to some type of evergreen blog post? It just drives traffic to your website. So that answered that.
Again, just be super clear on the goal there, right? Because you're not going to be able to sit there and say this ad resulted in this many bookings.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of the hard part, because a lot of our advertising efforts only started in January because we were new. And so all these things on Say the Knot did all these things. So even though the sales team has been hired for a year, we don't really know, you know what I mean? It's just coming from whatever, which we don't really care because people are booking, at this point.
Evergreen adds, Sam, to evergreen content good for like cold leads? Like,
yes, 100%.
To your business, to what you do, who have never interacted with you before.
Yeah, especially for social media ads, right? Again, a lot of small businesses, because they have tight budgets, they want to see that 1-for-1 conversion, right? I served this ad and this ad got this many conversions, right? But typically what you're going to need to do is run some of those brand awareness ads to that cold audience so that you can then warm them up through retargeted ads. And then you will bring them through the funnel, and then those retargeted ads you're going to be able to do, okay, conversion, right? Bookings, that's my conversion for this, right? But again, if you're asking a cold audience to make a purchase, it works at some price points for some industries and things like that. But like for you guys, nobody's just going to be like, yep, looks good, never going to the venue, like never talking to anybody, just booking. Like that's not your purchase journey. So you're going to need to warm people up. So for you, a conversion might literally just be booking a call or something, like, and you might count that as a conversion. And then from there, with your organic stuff, you need to look at, okay, once we're getting on a call with them, we're booking 60% of those people, right? And so that information will still feed into your ads when you're looking at them. But that's why, as a business owner, I really stress understanding your purchase journey, right? Because if your goals for your ads are not matching up with the purchase journey, this is why, businesses try ads and then they're like, they never work for me. And it's usually something like that. That's the problem.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome. I know we are a little over 10 o'clock. So if anybody needs to jump off, we will have this recording up on YouTube. I'll try to have it up there by the end of the week.
Yeah.
And if you think of any questions later, you can comment on there and Sam can follow up with you there as well. But
For
we
sure.
have a couple of more questions, just two that I want to get to really quickly, because I think that they are, they're, good. And I want to make sure we get them on this call for everyone to hear. So first one is actually one that I asked. We do have some real estate agents in the group. And so I thought of this for them. Are boosted posts good for people who are like in real estate, who maybe just want to call some attention to a specific listing of, let's say they've got a new listing, they're posting that listing on their social media, and they just want to draw like some extra attention to that? Not that anybody do that in this market, but
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can, but I would like almost argue, wouldn't you see more results from doing a catalog post where you can show a swipe through of multiple listings?
okay,
right?
yeah,
Because again, then you're going to be able to be tracking those clicks, and then you can have that open into an instant experience. It's like a Facebook landing page,
right.
where they can fill out a form to express their interest, right? So again, get super clear on your goals for that thing, right?
Awesome. This question from Monica, I think, is good. Just a clarification question for anybody who doesn't know. Are Facebook ads fed to Instagram, or do they have to be set up separately?
So they're all set up in Facebook Business Manager, so there's Facebook Business Manager, and within Facebook Business Manager, Ad Center or Ad Manager lives in there, and your Facebook page, like your business page, also lives in Business Manager now. So you will set up Facebook and or Instagram ads in Ad Manager on Facebook, and you can select your different placements. So I talked about those 27 different placements. If you're boosting posts, those are happening from Ad Center, which is different than Ad Manager. And that really throws people for a loop. So if you are selecting on Instagram, like promote this post, boost this post, that's actually happening and living in Ad Center, which you can view and access if you go to your Facebook business page, and on the left-hand side, halfway down, you'll see Ad Center. They're still billed to you as ads, whether they're happening in Ad Manager or they're a boosted post in Ad Center. But this is something that like people cannot, the taxonomy, Facebook really messed it up, and it's like throwing people for a loop. So just something to keep in mind there.
Could really do some work at making things a little bit
like
easier.
You would think they would make giving them money a little bit easier.
One would think. My theory when you're trying to get paid is make that process as simple as possible.
Right. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I have two questions that Tatum wrote in the chat that I want to get to, because I think both are actually really good and apply to a lot of people. And then we're going to close it out for the day, because I know it's gone over time. So first question Tatum asked that I think we could all struggle with is, she said, when doing ads in the past, I have struggled with finding the right size of market. It's either too narrow or too broad. So what are some of the best ways to get the right size target market?
I would really look at retargeting. So with your cold audience, you can target a cold audience based on demographics and psychographics, right? And their online behavior. But typically it's going to be demographics or demographics or psychographics, right? So demographics, age, gender, that kind of stuff. Psychographics would be like, they like this thing, or they're interested in this thing, right? But look at, can you build lookalike audiences off of either your current followers, your current pixel, things like that, because lookalike audiences are typically going to lookalike audiences are typically going to be better than anything you set up for demographic and psychographic targeting. And then again, Facebook has that little ticker, and so Facebook will tell you if it's like too broad or too narrow there. But that also has a function to do with your budget as well. So if you're targeting a really wide audience with not a lot of budget, they don't like that because you're not setting yourself up for success, right? So again, it's different for everybody, and I'm sorry, but that's like my general, I would really try lookalike audiences.
Okay, cool. And then the next one she has is another good one. So she says, in the past, I needed to do ads for an intimate size event, and the cost for someone to run ads for her was more than she could even profit from the event if the event sold out. So how do you find companies that take into consideration that some ads are done for things that like have a max profit? Like, how do you find that balance between like doing it yourself, which is complicated?
Right. Yeah. So the structure of pricing for most ads managers is going to be either a percent of the spend, or it's going to be a flat rate. Okay. So if you're running a really small event that has a cap, percent of spend is not going to work for you because your spend is going to be too low. They're not going to make any money off of it. So I would look for someone who does a flat rate. You're also you might hit on it might be difficult to find those people also if it's less than 3 months, because again, you kind of just have to think of it as like, is it worth it for them, right? Because campaign setup and understanding your audience and things like that it takes time, right? It's a whole onboarding process. So you might look for somebody who charges flat rate and who you can do an agreement to, if those events are recurring, maybe you might find someone who can do that. I would definitely look for a freelancer, not an agency though. They're going to be more flexible in terms of their pricing.
And are there, just to follow that up, if someone is in a similar situation where they want to run ads, but they have found that they don't have, like for this specific instance, you know, obviously maybe working with someone isn't within the budget right now. Are there any resources if they're going to try and learn to, you know, run an ad on their own to get started? Are there any resources you suggest people check out? Besides this presentation, of course, but resources to sort of help them get that first ad going so that they set themselves up.
Right. In terms of like setup and like walking you through the setup and stuff like that, YouTube is going to be your friend, right? Because the setup and the platforms are always changing. You do want to like make sure you're looking at a really, a more recent video. Like that content can't be evergreen because it's always changing. But I would really look at YouTube. Google is your friend. Like Facebook has a whole, and Google, they have their own like training documentation. Even Facebook's is sometimes it's old for their own stuff, which is ridiculous. But Google has a whole big thing, and so does Facebook. So I would really recommend looking into that. Where you're going to fall short is like the strategy piece. A lot of them are not going to really go into strategy. So from there, I would look for resources for your niche. So that might be like running ads for a launch or running ads for your specific, service-based or creatives or something like that, right? There are a lot of courses. A lot of them are still kind of pricey though, because they it is super complicated and they go in really, really specific. But I would really start with Googling, and like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram and Google, they have all of their own stuff. So that's where I would really suggest you start.
Okay, perfect. All right, we are going to wrap it up. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we end today's meeting? Anybody?
And if anybody has any questions, like you reach out to me, I'm in the group, or you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm sam.DiNicola on Instagram. Because again, you're probably like, but what about me? And we're all unique butterflies and everybody's strategy is going to be different, right? So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, because this is very high level in general, but you're going to have specific questions for your specific situation in your business. So
I actually have one question for you, Sam, that I just thought of. I know we've got a lot of wedding professionals in this group. We've got some product makers as well. do you ever run into competition with ads that make it a bad time to run ads? Like if you're a product maker, is it not good to run ads, between
Around the
Thanksgiving and Christmas
holidays.
because everybody's trying to run ads then? And like if you're in the wedding industry, is it not good to run them during engagement season because everybody's running them during engagement season?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's always going to be more expensive to run ads in November and December. So that doesn't mean that you can't run ads. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be successful, but I wouldn't wait and start running ads in November. If your ads are already running and you already have that audience and things like that, that's totally fine. I wouldn't pause ads during that time. They're going to be a little bit more expensive, but that would be fine. But if you're like, oh, I want to start ads, it's October 20th.
Yeah.
Like maybe wait until the new year. In terms of engagement season, I haven't seen specific negatives around that, just because it's kind of a long enough season that you should be okay.
Okay.
And when they're making that decision is like a 6-month period, and depending on when they get engaged, so you have like a 4-month period of when people are starting to look for those vendors. So I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. But if you're product based or anything like that, or really any ads, November, December, elections, that was a rough go too. So the elections were spending a boatload of cash this, last year. So everything was, all fall through the holidays, everything was a little bit more expensive last year because of that. So it's going to be a little bit more macro, like not as industry specific, micro in terms of seasonality of ads.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, awesome. Thanks, Sam. We really appreciate it. We will get this up on YouTube.
I'll send you the presentation also in case you guys just like want to share that to the group or whatever.
Yeah. We'll do that as well so that everybody can go back in and look to that slide deck. I know there's a bunch of information in there that we would all sort of like to read through and like process.
Rising tide really, man, woof. They really set the bar high on this one. So that's a lot of information.
Yeah, it is. And it's such a hard, complex topic, and it's so specific to every individual in every industry. So Thank you, Sam, for talking with us today. And thank you, everyone, for jumping to this week with us. Like Tatum mentioned in the beginning, I think we are going to switch to the third Tuesday of every month because National Rising Tide is doing a big national one every second Tuesday, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. And it seems that mornings are working really well. I know it's ever changing with COVID and schools and all of the things that are happening. So we'll keep adjusting as we need to ensure that everybody can tune in. So yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll get this up on YouTube, and then we'll get Sam's slide deck posted as well. And if you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments on YouTube or on Facebook, and we will make sure that Sam sees them.
All right, perfect.
Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.